Hi, everyone. My name is Tom Maravali. I am the founder of Springboard Futures. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited. It's had a lot of great feedback just before this webinar even starts. So today we're talking about Black influence and inclusion in the home industry. Our industry is facing a period of really a defining cultural shift. And so as we have watched the Black freedom and equality movement, it's very clear that it's not going to go away. A part of that's because it's what's right, and a part of it is because it's a groundswell of support driven by a lot of emotional factors, a lot of statistical factors. We've got more diversity in generations, in younger generations than we ever had before. That's going to propel it, and it's going to keep it going. But we have a duty to keep it going also inside of our industry. So that groundswell of support is not going to go away until we bring mandates into the system and change the system to make it better. That's going to mean changes in a lot of businesses, a lot of industries, and home is probably one of the industries that change the most because we have so much consumer interface. Consider that in North American, the home decor market totally is estimated at about $200 billion if you include hard home, soft home, housewares categories, and that stability and projected growth is above average for retail industries. So that growth gives us a really expansive potential to engage underrepresented Black professionals, and moreover, it means that consumers are expecting retailers to act by making responsible change and by using responsive product as well. So the question really arises: how can the home industry work collectively to create systemic change? How can how can we establish new standards for inclusion and equality? What will the demand be for unity and equality? And what do we mean to home products and assortments? I hear somebody squishing something. I don't know what it is, but there's the.
I say, is everybody muted coming in?
So today's webinar, we brought together 3 experts spanning from concerns on the supply side to trend forecasting and to interior design. Our objective is to discuss essential considerations for the advancement and equality and diversity of the home industry. I still hear that that strange scraping noise. So if you have your mic on, I'd ask you to. So it's a lot to cover, and we're going to have Q&A at the end. We've got a lot of feedback this week. There are a lot of personal experiences in here. We're really excited. So I want to start by telling you a little bit about our illustrious panel. We're very excited to have them all. So let's start. Let me share my screen for a minute.
Hey, Tom, I just got a message that some people are waiting still to be let in. I don't know if it works that way, but I just thought I'd let you know.
Oh, thank you. It's funny, I don't.
So sometimes as the host. I got one message saying they're in, so maybe it's been taken care of.
No, I don't see anybody waiting to get in, so
okay.
Try clicking in again, maybe.
Yep. Thanks.
Thank you. Maybe that you're not registered also, that could affect that. So let's go into the introduction to the panelists really quick. If I can share my screen with you. So our first panelist, many of you probably know, and that is Patty Carpenter. Sorry about that. So Patty is the principal of Carpenter & Company and Trendscope. In addition to her leadership, Carpenter & Company, she serves as Global Trend Ambassador for Maison Objet Paris and America. She's a consultant for Pantone. I'm happy to say that since its inception, she's been a senior contributor for us at Springboard Futures. Her work has taken her to 57 countries, researching, speaking, and forecasting trends, as well as working with indigenous artisans in international product design and development to create sustainable links to international markets. So welcome, Patty. Our second panelist is Katrina Griggs. She is the founder of Curated Home Brands, a showroom in Atlanta. She's got a winning entrepreneurial spirit, and you'll see that very shortly. She's got over 35 years of successful sales and management experience in fashion and home industries, and that led her to the creation of the multi-line home decor showroom, Curated Home Brands. It's got over 2,500 square feet, and her company brings a vividly diverse collection of brands to America's Mart in Atlanta. You can see some of those lines here. Welcome, Katrina. And then finally, last but not least, we have Everett Brown. Everett Brown is the principal of Everett Brown Design here in New York. His unique aesthetic has earned him a reputation lauded for infusing modern classic style with a global perspective. His ability to bring a sense of luxury, livability, and comfort to both public and private spaces has earned Everett the acknowledgement of the New York Times, Westchester Magazine, Essence, and Black Enterprise, to name a few. He's been featured on television, including TLC, The Fine Living Network, and also he was a finalist for HGTV's Design Star in Season 4. Welcome, Everett. So,
Thank you, Tom.
That's a pleasure. Thank you all for being here. Like I said, we have a lot to cover, so I'm just going to start getting into some of the questions that we have, and I've integrated some of the things that, am I sharing my screen with you? No, I don't. It's fine. The first sort of group of questions we wanted to cover was on education and engagement. And, there have been some variances of opinion about the education and the responsibility of various organizations, the responsibility of Black professionals to whether or not the onus for education lies on the Black community. So some people feel that the market has to educate itself, both, whether it comes to resources or whether it comes to human resources or finding the right people. And some people feel that, the fastest route to equality is immediate and direct engagement and education. Do you have any feelings on that? Like, what does self-education look like in the context of the home industry?
I just
Ben?
We're all like,
who wants to start first?
Well, I can start. I think what it looks like, Tom, is you got to start outside the industry. It starts out with understanding systemic racism, right? I think if you don't have a great comprehension of systemic racism, then we already have a great challenge. So we got to deal with that issue first, get educated around it. And when you think about it, none of us until college, I'm assuming, big assumption, but most of us didn't even learn anything about African and or African American history until we entered college. And there are many of us who actually passed that. I'll turn it over to everybody else.
Yeah, I would agree. Absolutely. There's the outside the industry kind of education and the inside of the industry education. So certainly, as Everett said, the thing that frames everything is what's going on outside, which is the world at large, which is the big conversation of systemic racism. But then within the industry, we've also been talking among ourselves and certainly among many other people about the idea of just what education looks like for people of color who want to enter into our industry. So do we have a pipeline to learning that can start? We talked as early as the junior high school level. I sit on the board of the High School of Fashion Industries. I've been injecting the idea of home decor and home style as well as fashion. And then with my work with colleges and universities around the world, from FIT and Parsons and Pratt in the new school here to Rhode Island School of Design to SCAD. And I speak every year in January when I'm in Paris working with Maison Objet with the American University in Paris. It's this idea of seeing different and varied faces and hearing from these new voices that we all need to bring to the table. So it's a combination of the inside and the outside as I see it.
Mm-hmm.
The idea of systemic racism is something that's been going, it's been going on for some time. And so to educate, if you want to be educated about it, first you have to recognize or acknowledge that there is systemic racism going on. And how do you define that? What makes up systemic racism? Look at the different parts of it. How does it look? And it comes in many different ways. It comes in how we're employed. It comes in how we're described. It comes in, in many different ways. And sometimes people may not necessarily mean to say the things that they're saying, but they don't realize how racist it is, in them saying that. And so in terms of educating themselves about systemic racism, I think you have to almost assimilate, if you will, and come to know, allow yourself to really be immersed in Black culture to understand.
But if you wanted to understand systemic racism, is there an opinion maker that you would send us to? Is there a book that you say, this person really gets it? This person understands, yes. It has to start somewhere.
Yes. Glad you brought that up, Tom. So right now, my favorite #1 book is White Fragility by Robin DiAngelo. And it is an amazing book because she deals with the issue head on. She deals with black and white, not in between, black and white. She doesn't deal with money. She deals with power. And then she deals with the sensitivity that white people have to talking or having the discussion about racism, prejudice, and discrimination. And she defines them very clearly.
Yeah, I'm halfway through that, and one of the things that really impressed me was there are acts that we all take that are racist acts that we don't even think of them as racist.
Exactly.
Because it's so embedded in our behavior that you just don't realize it.
It becomes the norm.
I wouldn't go into a class that I teach and go to the principal and say, so where are your Black students? Why don't you have any Black students? Have you it's simple things that we even just taking things as being okay when it's not okay.
Yeah. And also you have to, we are different cultures. That's, as Blacks, we might go about doing things very differently than, our white counterparts may, but it doesn't mean that it's wrong or that it's not the norm. And so getting familiar with and comfortable with, those things that, might be considered part of Black culture helps you to become more educated also, I think. And that's, I think, sometimes maybe where it falls short because, we are quick to be a part of what whites are doing, but maybe whites aren't as quick to be a part of what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think there's a combination of things certainly to play off of that whole idea of what you said, Tom. There are things that happen that you may not realize. Those tiny little things that are referred to as microaggressions are the kinds of things that we live with on a day-to-day basis that they're so commonplace that even as Black people from time to time, you're not completely aware until after something that
like
right. Did that just happen?
They just do that or something. And those are those kinds of things that are just teeny little small, might appear completely meaningless, but if you think of them on a day-to-day basis piling up, they create a feeling of oppression that just kind of sits with you constantly unless you make really cognitive decisions to
and it paints a picture in the mindset.
Yes,
paints a picture in the mindset of the one that's saying it that isn't necessarily true.
Yes.
It causes people to make assumptions and kind of group people together, kind of make an overall statement about. And so
and I was going to say, Tom, also a part of what drives that is an understanding or lack of understanding of white privilege. So that's the thing that White Fragility deals with, and it is amazing read. It's very well written, but you got to understand systemic racism, and then oh my God, like I just done these things. And then the white privilege.
Yeah.
Because there's always this conversation of, I've had it difficult. And I'm going to hand this over to Patty because she has a really great story in terms of explaining this.
Well, yeah, I don't know how many of our listeners would have listened into Oprah's 2 days of where do we go from here. But one of the panelists that she had cited this sociologist that used what I thought was the easiest interpretation of how one can describe white privilege that's non-threatening and that everyone can absorb and understand. And that basically is, if you think of it as a stream that has a current, and the current is constantly flowing in one direction. When you are white and you get into that stream, you are flowing in the direction of the current. So even if you come upon hardship at some point in time, if you have issues, the current is carrying you along in a certain way, and you are moving in that direction. When you are Black and in that self-same stream, the current is pushing against you, so that everything that you do is you are constantly pushing back against something that is a tide that is moving towards you. And those two, just looking at it from that point of view, if you think about that whole idea of constantly feeling as though you're pushing against something versus constantly feeling as though whatever it is pushing you forward, it's pushing against you forward, then that really is a very simple way to understand that feeling of privilege. So it doesn't mean that you come, that you are trust fund baby, and that you started your business with a mere $1 million, that someone left you. It's not that. That's not the kind of privilege we're talking about.
I also like to couple with that entitlement.
Yes.
So entitlement and privilege, go hand in hand, I believe, because, just that sense of entitlement, like, and I've known this to be said many different times on different levels, how do you have that and I don't have that kind of thing?
Right. I think it's easy. We associate racism there's like a general sort of, when you say somebody's a racist, you see them as making hateful acts, and it's much more than that. It's much more nuanced than that. And
absolutely.
Yeah, it can be very sweet.
Aggressive act.
It is. There's an article I just read the other day, and I'm sorry because I meant to write it down so that I would have it for people. I can certainly send it to you, and we can send it out to the email that you're going to start around this. But it really talks about the fact that the same way we have 6 degrees of separation that we refer to, there are 3 degrees to racism, and at that top, that first degree is what we would everyone anywhere would call out as racism, something that that is obvious and smacks of it. By the time you get to that 3rd degree, that's where those microaggressions are. And I'll use a personal one. My hair is in its natural form. Most of my life, I've worn my hair in its natural form. But for people who didn't know me prior to 6 or 8 years ago, when I cut it, I had dreadlocks to my waist. And I started them when I lived in the very white town of Andover, Massachusetts, for that very reason, because I was living in a very white place, and it was a way for me to hold on to my identity and be open about it. And at the time that I grew my hair, so that there's a period, you don't just end up with locks to your waist. Of course, it has to grow. And I cannot tell you how many times in a mall, in a professional setting, at my workplace, at a doctor's office, people would come up and, without asking me, touch my hair. Now, would you go up and touch just anyone's hair on the street that you don't know, that hasn't invited you to say anything about it? No. And they didn't think of it as anything negative. In fact, many of them would say, it's beautiful, and immediately go to touch it. But the point is, this is my hair, this is my personal space. And please ask me, I would not come up and just touch yours. That would fall under microaggression.
Yes, and I'd like to piggyback on that as a man who's worn his hair bald. So I've been bald since my 30s, and coming up through corporate America, I can't tell you how many men and women decided that they wanted to rub on my head and found it okay. And I found it very offensive and getting way too close to comfort.
It's an aggressive act.
It is. It really
absolutely. Absolutely.
So one of the things that I wanted to point out to the viewers, I think because we've got a creative crowd here, that it's very easy to assume that what we're talking about is strictly creative and creative positions. But when we identify the volume of retail, I just want to make it clear that the expectation for all of us, there's, the Black community and Black professionals have to be pulled into buying positions. It's assortment planning. It's the breadth of retail, merchandising. I mean,
Product development,
Everything.
sourcing.
it
Right.
should be there. And I think what I'm going to toss out to you guys is there are organizations, and we'll publish all this, but there are organizations that are resources for this, right? Where people can go and say,
Sure.
I need a professional, or I need to, because unfortunately it's like you're not, if you want to level the playing field and to get a decent sort of ratio a reasonable ratio of Black professionals to every other, then you can't go into Monster and just start searching by Black, so it's like you have to
Sure.
engaging you with, I'm sorry, it may not be politically correct, but it's something
Yeah.
that we have. But you need to, so what kind of organizations can we go to find these things? And you don't have to answer it just now. We can provide it to all the watchers. Have anybody?
There are a couple that we could certainly call out.
So,
You want to talk
yeah.
about Bad Guild?
Yeah, I was going to start with Bad Guild on the home side, interior design, architectural side is the Black Artists and Designers Guild. And then from a fashion side, we have BRAG, the Black Retail Action Group, which I've been involved with for over 30 years. And the organization has been in existence for over 50 years. So those are great resources for creating pipelines. But I just want to say, as we talk about creating this pipeline, before we get excited about finding the people, there are a lot of people who exist already in the industry. And I shouldn't say a lot, enough. And
There are.
with their experience and
More than enough.
capability, they come with a big punch. And what I'm getting to is we can create as much pipeline as we want, and we can train and funnel and encourage and set the aspirations for our people of color. But if every time they enter into an organization, they are shut out because the organization still doesn't understand white privilege, systemic racism, it's a waste of time.
True.
Right.
It's
Well, organizations
absolutely a waste of time.
Absolutely. Organizations need to take a look at, who do they have within their organization? When they sit down at their weekly meetings and they look around the table and don't see a mix of people and any people of color at minimum, then that's a problem.
Yeah.
They need to examine
It's a
themselves.
problem.
Yeah,
And
it's a
we-
problem.
Pull it out. It shouldn't.
Yeah,
It can't always come from us saying, "Why aren't we here?" Internally, it has to. The
They
question:
need to examine themselves.
What are we missing by not having all of these voices?
Absolutely.
So we know, the problems are manifold. To speak to what you were saying, Everett, absolutely. You have to address the current employees under your roof and positions that you have or can create right now to meet the needs. Pipeline, though, is very important, and I don't want to just glaze over that. Down the road we'll be talking about it more. But pipeline is super important because there has to be outreach to students, to areas, because there are populous areas where people don't go in and talk about how great retail is, what the opportunities, what the careers are, and frankly, that's in white communities too. A lot of people who reach out for retail talk about buyers, merchandisers, and things like that. It's a wide breadth of, but I think breadth of opportunity, even inside educational institutions, like all the positions that we do, whether it's product development, design. So we're going to be
All the different.
institutions as well.
Tom, you're going in and out for some reason.
Right.
Is
the
anybody
volume
else
is not
hearing that?
good.
Yeah, we keep hearing you sort of cutting in and out. But while you're fixing that, I would like to say that as an example, right now in this current the AD 100, the El Decor, there are 6 amazing interior designers that are listed in this 10th edition or 10th anniversary, is it, Everett? Edition of this AD list. I think it's 10th. So, there's a wonderful there's a wonderful resource. And I will also add to your group that you called out, Bad Guild and BRAG. There's also the Black Interior Designer Network.
Yes.
Yeah.
That can also be referenced.
More, Patty, because BRAG is
Black Retail Action Group. BRAG is the Black Retail Action Group. Bad Guild is the Black Artists and Designers Guild, and BIDN is the Black Interior Designers Network. And we can
Right.
put
We'll
all
be
of those
providing
contacts.
all the viewers. We'll be providing you with a PDF that lists these organizations out. So you can,
And that's not all of them. Those are just three.
Yeah,
No.
curated quarters is another one. But there are a
you know,
couple of hubs for finding people of color and talent.
Yeah.
Well, and also just like, we search out, different places to go and people to see or be connected with. Something as simple as Instagram, when you start to follow, say, a Patty or Curated or Everett, and you start to see who they're following and start going down those rabbit holes, because that's exactly what we end up doing. It's like, oh,
Yes.
let me follow them. So
Yeah.
that's one way and that's just a very simple thing to do, to find out. And then, if they're not moving in the direction that you want to follow, then you can always unfollow them. But it certainly is one simple way of finding people and
Right.
being connected and even educating yourself too.
Absolutely.
Right. So I just want to say, not to discount the point again, Tom, but it is so very important when we do hard work, and I've been doing it for over 30 years, to seek out, to train, to inspire people of color to enter this industry. I can't tell you how disappointing it is to see a young, talented Black woman or man go into a corporation and get eaten alive because they don't have ambassadors, they don't have mentors, they're not allowed to make mistakes like their colleagues. They have to deal with microaggressions on a daily basis. So I love the idea of focusing on pipeline, but I really want to make sure we do not overlook, before we get to building this pipeline, we've got to get our organizations in line and ready to accept this talent, because there is an abundance of talent out there.
Oh, absolutely. One of the things that came to mind for me, and having been in the retail side of businesses, retailers, some of the big retailers used to have what they call programs where they kind of primed people, to move through the ranks, if you will, of retail. And within the home industry, there's not an entity like that, or even within corporations, they could easily have something along those lines of their own to help move people along. And I'll use something else that comes to mind. Quite often in this industry, you go to the market centers and the people on the loading dock are Black, but the people that are in the showrooms are not. And to find showroom managers, that are Black and managing showrooms, let alone own a showroom, is hardly next to none. And, why is that? So some of those same people that possibly, and I'm just using it as an example, not to say it is always across the board, but it's very possible that some of those people who are on the loading dock would aspire to, to greater things within the industry, given the opportunity and the training.
Yeah.
I think you bring up
And it happens.
something that the market centers are a prime place where we could really push that through.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
There's
Within my own showroom, I am, on a very small scale, doing some mentoring and looking at putting together some classes, for a small group. And if that means, and we kind of looked into doing this, the gentleman that's working with me, I'm going to the schools on a junior high school level or high school level and talking to them about what it is we do, about this industry, and then putting together some tours, allowing them to come and see, or taking them to see manufacturing, or even reaching out to some of the people that I know that are product developers and talking to them about creating products. And even to, I think there was at High Point, at maybe a couple of High Points ago, there was an opportunity for some students to create products, but to give those kind of opportunities and have their product brought to the marketplace, not that it necessarily has to be for sale, but to see the kind of reaction that they get from people, that in itself can be quite encouraging.
Yes.
So just, it's going to require some thinking out the box,
Right.
and there's opportunity there to do it.
So would you be with the Atlantic Market Center and talk about mentoring programs and push some
Absolutely.
of these? Terrific. Let me move on a little bit further. So I just had a question pop up that I think is a really good, and it is, how do I know that the lines that I purchase, whether or not the lines that I purchase offer diverse are diverse inside their organizations. So how can I how can I support that? How can I make sure that the lines that I buy, how can I encourage diversity in the lines that I'm buying?
Challenge them. Ask the question.
Ask the question.
We sit in the moment now where it is okay to ask the question.
Absolutely.
This is what we're trying to as a company.
Don't be afraid.
Exactly. As a retailer, here's what our mission statement is, or the way that we want to run our business
out there.
And we want partners who are like-minded. How are you like-minded? Or if you are not like-minded, is it something that you plan on becoming? Is it something that is even on your radar? I don't think this is a time for timidity. I think this is a time to be
and it's a business question, people. It's a business question. If you get involved with somebody who's not, and people start, pulling away from that business, you're going to lose business. If you've gone out and bought, I was a buyer, divisional GMM for many years in the fashion industry, and we didn't ask questions like that, but we asked related questions to child labor and so forth. These were business decisions that could ultimately affect my bottom line. So it's really important to be courageous and just ask the question.
Yes.
Because on the vendor side, we know that if you ask, I spent a lot of years in there, if one person asks, 10 people are thinking it.
Exactly.
Well, people just have a problem asking if it's made in the U.S. or if it's green. So the same, it's the same way.
It's the same thing.
Same thing.
There's no crime in saying it's important to me. I'd like to hear more about that. Drop me a line. Let me know what you find out. Because a lot of people that you ask, the reps may not know, but getting the message upstairs and saying this buyer wants to know, or this retailer wants to know, it's important.
And on that note too, Tom, for those manufacturers who are wanting to have products who maybe haven't in the past carried product that's made by Blacks or had product developers who are Black, there are a lot of businesses out there that are sort of cottage industry businesses that are thriving businesses and producing good products, but haven't brought it to the marketplace. Give them an opportunity, kind of mentor them, take them under your wing or bring them into your fold. And I kind of liken it to a little bit of Shark Tank kind of thing, invest in them. Yeah. And they could, you both can make money, but it brings them into a marketplace that's going to explode them. I often will ask people, if I see great product, I ask them, have you been to the marketplace? Have you shown this at market? And, what is that? So I'm always looking for and wanting to expose, be it artists with their work, and trying to connect them with larger companies that could possibly produce their artwork and show it and make it available to more people. And they're just blown away by those opportunities. They have no clue about it.
I can't remember, but Macy's has a program which is founded and headed up by one of my dear friends, and I can't remember the name of it, but they actually go out and seek young, developed Black businesses, bring them in and actually teach them about running a business.
John?
And it is really phenomenal, but I think that would be really great for our industry. Yeah. Both at the manufacturing and wholesale side.
Absolutely.
To just be phenomenal.
Go ahead,
no, just because all of this really is a perfect time, as I say, we're sort of in this place of perfect storm, but as somebody who's, a trend person, who's been, constantly looking down the road all the time and ahead to where we're headed, coming out of this pandemic with all of these shifting sands, one of the things that is repeatedly said around the world, because I'm working with my colleagues in Paris, I'm working with colleagues in London, I'm working with colleagues in Italy, working with colleagues in Germany, and then all across the US. It's the kind of thing that's top of mind everywhere. And so it's not this thing that's going to make you out, this outlier. It's going to be the kind of thing that's very important to the consumer as well as to your
absolutely
the whole.
We just had a comment come in.
Let me finish. It allows for two things, really. One thing is a point of differentiation within your product mix, which everyone needs now is looking for. It has a story that's a true story and a real story that needs to be connected. And that is, to use the word trend, although lately I've been using more of a movement. It's about the idea of not being something that's trendy that we're going to jump on for a hot second. It's something to the heart. Real, movement. And so all of those things speak to dollars at the bottom line.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is a category killer, people.
Yeah.
What I was going to also,
Oh, you're breaking up, Katrina.
I'm breaking up as well.
Yeah, there you are. There you are.
Oh, okay. What I was going to say is when those brands or those smaller, those cottage industry companies have an opportunity to come into a marketplace, or there's a need for that education for the process and to kind of hold their hand. And so, I understand that sometimes in a market center kind of setting, or the business of being a market center is, not maybe necessarily their business to hold the hand of the person that has the showroom that's selling product. But maybe that's maybe they need to go down that road and add that component to their business.
Smaller retailers, where they're going to start in the end anyway, really do have the capability of nurturing smaller businesses because they've been
Absolutely.
They know what it takes, and the challenge of adopting, so to speak, or mentoring somebody on that side, it would be brilliant if one small business picked one artisan, or one small business support on the wholesale side. It would be amazing. Let me ask you, because a lot of this is sort of converging on a point I wanted to get. So, when there's so much talk about cultural appropriation, and for me, without cultural appropriation of one form or another, the home decor industry is about the appreciation and the appreciation of different cultures, different looks, different inspirations. How can we address? I mean, we know that we're going to see more product inspired by this movement, and how it exactly executes itself, we don't know. I mean, that's going to be up to the designers that get engaged and things like that. But how do we make sure that it's not appropriated? What are some of the ways that buyers can buy product and when people challenge them and say, this is cultural, no, we did this.
Well, for
Ask
me,
where it comes from.
yeah, that's the
To ensure that the manufacturer is giving credit to the artisans and or the artists. This is the most important thing. And it also,
Not trying to make it their own.
it elevates the product, right? It makes it more authentic when you get that, background and foundation.
Add to the story.
Absolutely. As somebody who's been working with artisan development for the last 25 years, that story is how I built the business that I had when I was actually bringing product in. But now it's how I assist others in telling the stories about what it is that they're bringing in. So if it's a Black designer, then you can tell that story. If it's an artisan from another country, you can tell that story. But the one thing I would caution against as we talk about bringing in designers of color is please don't just relegate them to the borders
I'm going to
of
get
a very particular.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It's about design in the broad sense. We have
Right.
many different
Not
aesthetics.
everything that
We have many different ideas. We have been
Absolutely.
influenced by many different experiences. It is not just about bringing something in that small vein of Afrocentric.
absolutely.
It's bigger than even what you just said, and I want to give it a little more time. But let me jump back to one other thing that don't you think that in part for larger companies, if it's telling the story, it's giving credit where credit's due, it's engaging, it's employing the people who design the product, but also I think cause-related marketing has a role in here. If a part of it, whether it's supporting small Black businesses, there's so many great causes that support the community that you can be taking a percentage and giving back, because honestly,
It's true.
Be
philanthropic about it.
That's really important, Tom. And I was going to say, to that point, if you think of it as a resource versus a commodity, I think it'll get you there. And we said artists, we said artisans. The things that those two things have in common is made by hand.
Yeah.
People, people of color, but people.
Right.
It's the bottom line.
I think that it's I don't want to give It's not bad. I don't want to give large retailers an excuse not to engage craftsmen because, well, the volume isn't high enough. You know, sometimes you can work with a Black designer. They will help you create something.
Everything starts someplace.
Everything's
I
got
worked
something.
with Bloomingdale's and Neiman Marcus when I was bringing in artisan product. We were able to make the quantity they needed.
Sure.
Again, there's another point to this, though. A lot of the times what ends up happening is the type of artisan product that's brought in that people think of for volume is bought in at the very low end. This is not about that. This is about craftsmanship,
Quality.
bringing it in at a level. And if you do that, then you really do have the ability to bring in not only beautiful product, sustainable product that has the ability to have numbers behind it, but not millions. We're not talking about trying to.
But this is where some of their expertise comes in too, that they're able to help navigate those waters and, you know, and find ways. Maybe how they've been operating, they can take it up a few levels where they're able to make, you know, greater quantities that they've been able to produce. So
I think crafting is a part of
So
fabric, assuming the fabric behind you, okay? The fabric behind you is a mass-produced fabric that could have been designed by an African-American or that's still a mass-produced product just because it's not a craft. You know, I'm trying to say that if, you know, it doesn't matter, small or large, low volume, high volume.
absolutely.
It has to be possible, and cause-related marketing is a great way to if you have to make it in China because of the volume you have to do, then how are you going to offset that? How are you going to make it right? And you know, and it's not just about putting somebody's name on it. It's about doing the right thing and supporting. You know.
Yeah, and I was going to say, you know, doing business with a Black organization or a Black person is not a challenge, by the way. Let's not sit here and make it like it's an impossible feat.
Right.
Doing business with a Black company is like doing business with a white company.
Anybody else.
The other thing I want to say is let's not, you know, get this thing twisted when we're talking about sourcing versus buying. So as a Black person, as a buyer, you're going to hire me for my analytical skills, right? For my ability to train and develop people, anticipate trends, and more importantly, know when to get out of them, right? But as an artist or as a resource, I might want to sell you on what my strengths are. And often if you go into a person of color, it may be globally inspired or ethnically inspired, right? It may not be.
It may not be.
Absolutely.
That's the next.
So that, I just want to bring that to the forefront and make sure, but I don't want it to sound or feel like doing business with a small Black business is a complicated thing. It's not. It's just like doing business with a small white business.
Well, I'm sure that when I'm sorry.
Not you, Katrina.
Get a comment that just came up.
I'm sure that when I opened my showroom, many thought that it was going to have, you know, be more Afrocentric in the product mix that I offered. And, you know, I can't say that it is. We do have some product that is sourced from Africa, yes, but we have product that's from France. We have product that's made in the U.S. So, you know, it's as diverse as any other showroom would be.
You have fabulous dip tie throws from Peru.
Absolutely, yes, absolutely.
It's very diverse.
For sure.
So I just want to get back to the head of that conversation, which Patty started, and that is a conversation, a very lively conversation that we've had a couple of times about, you know, the fact that it's, you know, we're not just good at this. You know, there are Black designers who are great at Baroque. You know, hopefully not Baroque, but you guys want to say anything else about that? I mean, is that something that you deal with all the time? People are like, oh, I need somebody to do African things.
We get pigeonholed.
Yeah, being pigeonholed.
Absolutely.
Well,
or think that you're not capable of doing that particular job or task. You know, so someone else that's not as skilled as you gets the job. So yes.
Well, yeah, it's about a particular, again, that's one of those sort of almost microaggressions. It's about a diminishing of your expectation about what we're capable of bringing to the table. For me, it comes from someone diminishing what they think is about my experience or my expertise. As you called out in my introduction, I am incredibly well traveled. So is Everett. Those travels inform me just like they inform any other designer. And I often read an Architectural Digest or Lux magazine how so and so was informed by their travels. Well, so are we. Everyone's informed. If you're creative and you're open, you're informed by all the things that you do. And so
Absolutely.
those travels can be going down the street in Chelsea here in New York. Those travels can be working in Tunisia, working in South Africa, working in, anywhere that I happen to have worked in.
Not for nothing, Patty. I've traveled to be inspired by a crack in the sidewalk. So
Exactly. Wait, and since we're talking about inspiration,
So to diminish,
having come out of the fashion industry, one of the things I learned very early was that a lot of the fashion runway trends start in our neighborhoods.
yeah, they do.
I mean, they start literally years before they hit the Paris runway, but they don't give the credit. And so you miss the link. So and you see a little shift here recently. You can look at Black designers becoming the head of couture brands. So you're seeing that shift where not only is the credit being given, but it's like, now we want to make some money. We want to get some real talent in here. So those are opportunities that have been missed for decades until very recently.
Absolutely. I was a clothing designer on 7th Avenue for 27 years. And I, left the industry having been a vice president in several of the companies. And I'm talking about working with the names. So Bill Blass, Oscar de Renta, Ralph Lauren. I was working with luxury brands. I was the only person in there of color most of the time, certainly in my position. And it is not an easy place to sit, but it is a necessary place to sit. And I was not there because of my color. I was there because of my talent and my expertise and my experience, because if you couldn't do the job, you couldn't do the job. But at the same time, what Everett is saying, that sense of that so much of sitting in a meeting and hearing about what people are seeing as new and interesting and different, and you're sort of going, well, they were wearing that in Harlem, like,
my cousin had that on.
Absolutely.
It's like, giving some acknowledgement to your point of cultural appropriation. We all, we talked about this in our sort of prelude, but this whole idea of being the United States, we are such a young country that much of our design aesthetic is culturally appropriated from somewhere, whether it's Louis XIV, from France or somewhere else.
Has some influence.
Yeah, we are all influenced. And so just being able to step up and give credit where credit is due is how you avoid falling into that trap of cultural appropriation. And if you have the ability to be able to make it with the people who made it first, then that's the choice that I always made.
Sure.
I want to read you a couple of great comments we've gotten just quickly. One is from Sarah. Hey, Sarah Mount, who you all know. Sarah Mount's with America's Mart. She says, hi, panelists. Sarah Mount from IMC America's Mart here. Love the idea of working together on education. I'd love to be a part of the mentorship initiatives we're talking about. Katrina, let's chat.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we're here.
Also a comment about, there's too many. I'll publish them all to everybody, but a comment about cause-related marketing. Cause-related marketing makes it easy for those of us individual consumers to support artisans and designers of color without even having to ask questions.
There it is.
Another comment, thanks to Springboard, Tom, Katty, Katrina, and Everett for bringing so many important issues to light, not only in our industry, but in society as well. All caps, this is how change goes.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to pull out, in terms of that cause-related marketing, one of my favorite stories to share, I share a lot with my students when I'm speaking in colleges and universities. When I had my collection of home textiles, which were made with artisans from around the world, all handmade and all high-end, when I first sold to ABC, Paulette and I put together a collection that we sat and talked about our respective travels, and we collaborated on something, and I put a collection together, and I always had a hang tag that talked about who made what we did and where it was made, and those routinely got taken off in the beginning because, again, ABC was so special, they didn't want everybody to know where everything came from. In my 6th to 7th year of selling them, I was going in and giving lectures to their consumers and to their people on the floor, their staff, of where things were made, how things were made, who made them, so that they could then share those stories with the customer. And so you can just see in that 6-year period how there was a huge shift. Well, this shift we sit in right now today, that's the way it is. You know,
Yeah.
those years of talking about transparency, who made it, you know, after the Bangladesh fires, who made it? And to your point, Everett, you don't want to work with children. So, you know, the craft marks that were put in place, the things that they did on carpets so that you know you're not being made with children. All of those things are things, shifts in the market. We're just at another one of those places.
I have two other quick questions to ask you. Well, they're not quick, but so a lot of retailers and brands and suppliers and trade organizations are making statements in support of Black equality. And not surprisingly, I think we're going to find that a lot of them are blackwashing because they're just, you know, I don't want to assume. I mean, suspicion lives in, as we've saw with COVID-19, we've seen it across a lot of things, that you say what's appropriate to say at the time to keep your consumer, and then you kind of like forget about it. So my question to you is, what do you think all of us can do to ensure that these commitments to equality, to inclusion, are honored? You know, does it just come down to asking the question and following up and saying, so what do you do about that? Or, you know.
Well, I think
Well,
if they're
I think
sincere,
it's also putting your money where your mouth is, right? So you either decide to buy and support an organization or you don't. But it's going to be a great challenge. Right now, we live in a time where our president is, you know, driven by money, right? Not his civil responsibility. So, you know, I'm curious to see where corporations go. We're going to have to be steadfast at really holding our corporations accountable. It's asking questions. It's where you invest your dollars. It's where you bank. And, you know, the list goes on and on.
Who's on your board,
and some,
your management staff.
right. And some of that may be, you know, some education on our part too, you know, of where we spend our money.
Absolutely.
To hold them accountable. So, you know, if they're not, you know, in support of, then we're not in support of either.
You can actually withhold lines. I mean, there's something all of us can do. You can say, you know, your store is not supportive. I've chosen not to sell you, or whatever you want to do. But I think funny chat comments are coming up about, you know, we need then boycott, you know, and I love to see that.
Yes.
Okay. But the power is not with them. Like you pointed out, Everett, the power is with us, you know? So,
support those who support you.
Yeah. Or your communities.
Yeah, or your communities.
Yeah, it's important.
Absolutely.
It's so important.
It really is.
You know, yeah, and I was going to say, we've talked about this conversation of diversity, and we talked about it yesterday, Patty, which is, it's really interesting in every other facet in our lives in America. We're all about creating diversity. If you're going to create an orchestra, right? What are you going to do? You're going to get your woodwinds, your brass players, your string players, and your percussionists. Why? Because you want to synthesize a symphony, right? Putting together a football team, you're not bringing in all quarterbacks. You got running backs, receivers, linebackers, right? Everybody has a different position. And when you discount the Black perspective, that's where you're weakening your team.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I'm going to ask you one more question before we get on to Q&A, and that is, Juneteenth, okay? So many people never even heard of it before, and now next year you can probably bet that it's going to be a national holiday. It's headed in that direction. It's how do retailers, you know, you can expect to see what I saw with Pride, which is you walk around Walmart.
Coming in and out, Tom.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I said we can expect to see a mass merchandising of this holiday. You know, same thing that we saw with Pride, T-shirts and mugs, all of this. How do retailers of scale that do those large assortments, how can they stay authentic? How can they market to that holiday respectfully? You know, what are your thoughts on that?
I say education, education, education.
Yeah.
It goes back to, linking everything you buy and do back to the artisans and the artist, right? It's calling out what Juneteenth represents. It's really taking a stakehold in it and becoming a part of it. Immersion, right? Immerse yourself into what it means to celebrate that day.
Yeah, I think
Absolutely.
it needs to, I mean, we were talking about it, and as we said, next year there'll be T-shirts just like, the country for July the 4th, and all of those things. But, to a certain extent, certainly being mindful of what it stands for in the same way that we try to be mindful of Martin Luther King's birthday as an example. You use that as a time to go out and do something that has a community service element to it, or to donate to a particular type of organization that's doing something relevant in the world, to maybe buy things made by people of color who are, if you're going to buy product for your store, really make an effort to buy things that are made for that holiday by people of color. It's about being mindful. Conscious.
Well, and I think also when they're making those decisions, and they should be making those decisions in a bubble. They should have some people who know the subject matter that they're consulting with, and not making those decisions on their own.
Yeah, it makes me think of, one of the things I didn't say today, and I say on every panel we're talking about today, it's really understanding Black history, right? And it's for white people, for you to understand your Black history, not my Black history. For you to understand walking in your own shoes, not my Black shoes, right? And this is really important. And that's what Juneteenth is going to represent in the future, right? Because for hundreds of years, right, we've not been taught the real history of this country. This is an American issue we're talking about today. It's not a Black issue.
We haven't been told the full story.
Exactly.
We haven't gotten the full story.
We all have Black history.
Yes.
Not just me.
Yeah.
But these are opportunities. This type of
Big opportunity.
product blast is an opportunity to tell stories, like you said, to gain. I mean, for me, this is like, if I had it to do again, because I went through the whole thing, with gay pride, walking into Target and seeing racks and racks, I was like, how many gay people are there? They're getting a thing. But if I had to go back and do it, if I knew it was coming, I would have gone to Target and said, how about, I'm using Target, Walmart, Kmart, everybody was doing it. Like, how about giving 1% to American Foundation for AIDS Research?
Absolutely.
Here. And, so now's the time to talk about it.
Using the power for good.
But that's what we're saying. That's the way from just being, co-opted into just another Hallmark, Hallmark.
To put money in their pocket, Yeah.
Right. And having had that experience, Tom, when you're sitting in the boardroom or at your next meeting, make sure everybody else knows.
Right.
When we got a panel of all white people, make sure they know and understand it. Because your point is very well taken.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You're all hearing it. Retailers are hearing it. And, I got your names on the list now. So but, I just had a question, and it was so touching that I have to ask it to you guys. The question was, how did we get here? What are white people afraid of?
They're afraid of losing the privilege.
I'm sorry, can you say it again? Because I didn't hear all of what you said.
It was to me, but I want to ask you guys, because it's a fascinating question. Tom, how did we get here? What are white people afraid of?
And then it's
that's a big question.
The privilege. It's the privilege. You've always been in charge. You've always stood in a place of privilege, and that place of privilege, in order for you to be on the top, had to put someone on the bottom. And we as Black people are the people that have traditionally been on the bottom. And I'm saying the bottom because in a country of immigrants, we are lower than all of the other immigrant groups. When you stand, I mean, yesterday I shared the thing with the story of the commercial. I don't know how many of you online on this call would have seen this commercial, but there's a lovely commercial that's being put on right now where this really nice looking younger Black guy is moving through his everyday life, living while Black. He's got his son teaching him how to swim in a pool, and he's being given these side-eye looks. He's going through the grocery store. He's been giving these side-eye looks. He goes into a clothing store. He's being followed. He's having a very normal young Black man day for those of us who are Black and understand what that looks like. And then the final frame is a courtroom where you hear the words "all rise" and everyone, comes to attention for the entrance of the judge, and they pan around the entire courtroom, multifaceted, very diverse courtroom. No, and you don't know where it's really necessarily going. Excuse me. And the black guy that we've been watching go through this life is the judge. So in that particular setting,
Right.
he is the person in charge. He has earned his right to be there as a judge. How much schooling, how much education, how much time and energy, whatever one has to do to get to the point of becoming a judge, he's earned that. And yet in his everyday life, his life is still that of the black kid who's running around with his pants down, because that's the way that our lives have been orchestrated. And so in terms of how we get here, that's how we get here.
Well, I
Right.
think-
We got here, Tom, I'm sorry. We got here because this country was built on systemic racism. We've got to
Inequality.
debunk, dismantle, and disrupt the system of racism.
Yeah.
We don't
It's-
want to have the hard question. And I'm glad the question was asked today because it's so important. How we got here is because we haven't been educated, right? And then we're afraid to have the conversation. We're having it today. Thank you, Tom, for bringing this
Absolutely.
forth, right? But this is what I described, that awkward moment, right? We're all going through and feeling a little uneasy, but we never got anything without a little hard work. But it's real simple how we got here. This country is built on system racism. It's very clear. And
It is.
we've got to break it.
Yeah, the wealth of this country comes from the fact that you had, years of free labor.
That's a part of it also. When what are white people afraid of? I'm going to answer that because I'm a white guy here. The obvious, Patty, you sort of started down a road, and yes, a part of it is there's a fear of losing power because we've always had it.
Absolutely.
The bigger reason, in my opinion, I had a teacher in grammar school, and she used to say, "A guilty conscience needs no accuser."
Are you what?
I didn't hear you.
She said, "A guilty conscience needs no accuser."
Okay.
And I think down, we know this isn't right. We know it isn't fair. We know that a part of it. It's such a great opportunity to just give us something right. It's where we go next. Your daughter asked a question.
Yeah, I see.
So, this is Lauren, Everett Brown's daughter, and I'm wondering, how can we continue to have conversations about diversity and inclusion without mistaking Black designers and Black citizens as victims of racism?
As we lost you, Tom. Can you read it again?
I mean, I can read it, but yeah.
This is Lauren, Everett Brown's daughter, and I'm wondering, how can we continue to have conversations about diversity and inclusion without mistaking Black designers and Black citizens as, quote, victims, end quote, of racism? You want to take that?
Oof. Great question, Lauren.
She's your daughter.
He's going to thank you for that later.
So I think it starts with education again, right? I think a lot of this, and I think the fear is not necessarily of losing power, right? The fear is being in a place of ignorance when you've always been sort of at the top in a place of knowing, right? So there's this thing, but I think, again, I can only default to education. We're going to have to learn about, our past, right? And then be accountable for it, right? I think once we're accountable, then maybe we'll take, those hard steps to tread forward.
I
But
think
that's an excellent question.
I think when we focus on equality, then that will help to move us forward. But when I say rather than focusing on racism, because that's the negative,
Yeah,
if we focus on the positive and allow our energy be, in the equality, trying to create equality, the racism will be erased.
I like it.
Right.
We got 3 new T-shirts
Racism
already.
will be
Somebody go make them.
erased by
And equity.
focusing on equality. And
Yeah.
so in everything that we do, we have to look at, is this equal? Are we doing the right thing? Are we acting in an equal, equitable way, with one another?
Yeah.
Right.
And, don't,
Right.
we can't start the conversation
as-
about things right if you don't address what was done wrong. So I mean, that's part of it.
Yeah, and as someone said, this is about equity, not about revenge.
Well, that's me.
Absolutely.
Equity is
Absolutely.
it's always about equity.
And respect. And respect.
Humanity.
Equality and respect are the two simple, things that are
You know,
head
you
of this.
But the thing is, the other good part about that question that Lauren asked, it really begs the challenge that we're not only challenging white people, we're challenging Black people.
Absolutely.
So what are we doing every day
Absolutely.
to wake up to do something different?
Yeah.
Like
We all
not
have to
feel like
examine
a victim.
ourselves.
I don't wake up in the morning and go, oh, I'm a victim.
Right.
So I think it's important that we really get to the root of what she's asking, and really cascade it out to everybody.
Yes.
I want to. Unfortunately, we're gonna have to get to Q&A. There's so many things I could talk to you forever, but I have to ask you one question, Katrina, because I'm absolutely blown away. I can't stop thinking about it. You just said a word, and I don't know whether it was by accident or not.
I know. I'll have to.
Racism, which I love.
That's what we
Racism?
said.
Or
We need
racism.
Racism. I've
That is
already
a good
got
trademark it. Trademark it.
.com on that one.
I love it.
I've already saved the domain name.
Brian is creating the T-shirt even as we speak. Brian's doing.
I'm doing it now. I've already called my attorney.
Jesse James from Shop Object just
We're working on it.
Jesse.
Trademark smiley face.
No,
Got it.
Brian.
Yep.
That's what I just said. Brian just wrote it to Katrina. You got to trademark it right now.
Right? Working on it. Literally a text.
No, I think it's amazing. So don't anybody take it, because if I see your name,
I will hurt you. Okay? Don't.
so okay, let's move on to Sue Hilty just said, I want it now.
Yeah, I see it.
She has a t-shirt. So I want to take some Q&A. Before we do that, a couple of things. A couple of just housekeeping things. First, I want to say, I know people tend to leave sometimes during Q&A. We're not putting a limit on Q&A. The panelists have been really kind and offered to stay on as long as there are questions. I do have to eat, so it's not going to be forever. But first, I want to say a couple of important things. First, we are there were so many great questions and comments, and we don't want to die on the vine here. So we've created an email that is new influences at springboardfutures.com.
Can't hear you. Say it again.
Sorry, it's new influences at springboardfutures.com. If you have questions for the panelists, please send them there. I will distribute it to all of them, and then the appropriate panelists, all of them, we will answer. These are not people without opinions, since you. I want to also tell you we're really proud to announce that Springboard is going to be launching a new web series.
You are breaking up, sweetie. I don't know what's happening, but we
You're
don't.
watching. Get
Okay.
closer to your mic.
Come on in.
Be one with your mic, Tom.
All right.
Treat us like your grandmother. What?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. So we're super proud to announce that Springboard Futures is going to be launching a new web series. It's going to be called Vital Voices, and it is going to be hosted by our own Patty Carpenter, your own Patty Carpenter.
Nice.
Series.
I love it.
And basically Patty's going to take us, it's going to be a master class of creative diversity, exploring relevant new issues and influences in home, basically delivering the intelligence we need to make this happen. So we're going to be hearing about not just new designers, we're going to be hearing about industry shifts. It's going to be amazing. It'll probably start in about 3 weeks to a month, and it's going to be
beautiful.
And these two people are going to be people that we'll talk to. We'll be talking to both of you at that point.
I'm available whenever.
We'll be launching a racism on that platform.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So let's go into Q&A for a bit. We've got a few questions. And Melissa, I'm going to ask you to come in here and ask the questions. Everybody, this is Melissa Gruenfeld, who is our
Hi,
head of...
Melissa.
Hi, everyone. Great talk.
Thanks.
Yeah, we're getting lots of great comments and feedback. So many people are so appreciative of the conversation and for all of you willing to go there and have it. So just a couple of comments before I get into the questions. One person says that she would love a whole talk about cultural appropriation. how to balance influence and inspiration, but be mindful. So you can address that if you wish.
That could be part of our program.
Like that.
Yep. Someone else asked, is it possible to put people over profit?
Absolutely.
Well, it happens often. It happens all the
Absolutely.
time.
It's necessary.
But let me
Isn't the country split in two halves based on something like that? Oh, I'm sorry.
the thing is that profit can move a cause forward faster than anything else.
Absolutely.
So yes, you can put people before profit, but sometimes latching your initiative onto a profitable venture makes it worthwhile for people to keep talking about it. So doing the right thing is absolutely essential, but it's a lot easier to do the right thing when it's good for everybody. You know, it's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
So
Sad.
Okay.
Good question, though.
Yeah. Shall I move on?
yes.
Okay, we have a comment here. Let us not forget about ethnic studies in colleges and corporations. They should request that new hires have that on their resumes, for example.
Mm.
Would agree. That's great.
That'd be a lot of people not getting jobs. I'm afraid of that one.
But it's a good, I think it's an interesting concept.
I think it's a great idea.
It speaks
Good
to the
indicator.
pipeline because we've been talking about how
Yeah.
we get educated. And if one of the movements that comes out of this is understanding, even as we talked about Juneteenth, but understanding Black history, understanding American history and how they are intertwined in
The real American history.
yes, not the whitewash, not the, the glamorous one that looks good, not the revised version. But if we really talk about how this country came to be, which is a fascinating story.
It is. And the thing, I was going to say, the thing that people are afraid of also, Tom, is we associate racism, as we started this conversation, with being mean and aggressive and, all these bad things. But yet everybody on the panel today has said, we've all experienced sweet racism. You don't have to be mean. And that's the part we've got to break through, right? It's really, it's really hard to get people to understand. So it should be required learning in high school. Forget about college. By the time you get to college, it's too late. It should be middle school, high school, college.
There's an awesome idea in here, and that is, we've all taken jobs with companies, and part of training and development should be, we all see that, when we fill out a job application, you see it at the
Very
bottom.
true. Part of the onboarding process.
It's part of training and development to
Absolutely.
say company values and enforces diversity and respect and equality. That's
Absolutely.
because you don't see that in
The minimum.
I don't want to generalize, but I've never seen it in any T&D class that I've been in.
Absolutely.
What's interesting is that we as a country, because we are so young, we learn so much about European history. And European history is not pretty. There's some very ugly things that happen in the beginning of many countries. But at the end of the day, we learn it and we move through it to get to where we are today. It's the same thing that has to happen here. We need to learn
Absolutely.
what came before so that, as they say, Sankofa, you won't be doomed to repeat it. You need to know it, but you need to be able to learn from it.
Racism has to be
It's that whole idea. Yeah.
the same seriousness as sexual harassment.
Absolutely.
Everything. Yes.
What it means, what it is, what it isn't. We can spend as much time, talking about systemic racism, not just.
Well, the history itself, parts of the history can start as, a child starts school. You start, on their level, start introducing it into their education, just like any of the other history is introduced.
Absolutely. I think we're saying that, one's education and one's workforce, it's
Yes.
like
Exactly.
workforce is where opportunity dies or lives. You know what I mean? And that's like, sorry, Melissa, what else?
Alrighty, so how can I spread the word, so to speak, about today's topic? Is there a source or a directory to guide those among us who want to support Black designers, businesses, etc.?
So that's kind of twofold, right? You can spread the word by talking to all your friends and every company you come into contact with. The resources Tom said he was going to send, but I'll name two of the top ones or three of them all of us together. But there's Badge, the Black Artists and Designers Guild. There's BRAG, the Black Retail Action Group. There's Inside. Well, I say Inside is a resource, but there's also BIDN, Black Interior Designers Network.
Right.
There's Curated Home is another organization out there. So there are a lot of different resources.
Yeah, and we have a lot of questions regarding resources and literature, so we'll put together a list.
Base of it, talking about the positive part. You know, when I started talking about doing this webinar, it was like I said to Patty, I just want to stop talking about the politics of it alone and start talking about moving it into business, moving it into actual change. You know, and I, part of that is talking. If you're in a market, talk to other showrooms. Ask what people are doing, because it's not just a shaming. It's an exciting opportunity topic. I think
Absolutely. You look at it as an opportunity.
You know, it's like it can't just be bad. You know, there's so many great things about it. But a part of it is always going to just keep it in the conversation. You know.
As an individual customer, how would I know that I'm supporting businesses run by people of color?
You have to ask.
Ask.
Yeah, you have to ask who you're buying it from. Do a little research on the manufacturer to see, you know, where they're sourcing their product from.
The interesting thing is our younger consumers are doing that already. They really have been leading the charge with this, because
Very much so.
they really have tied their value system, their personal values, into the products that they buy for themselves, whether it's for their spaces, their bodies, whatever. That's how a lot of the fashion conversations have begun to happen, because people started to look at the impact. You know, a lot of it started with sustainability, and that whole idea of what is the impact of the type of buying that we're doing on the planet. This is the same kind of conversation. What is the impact on our lives and our world, our society, by the choices that we make, for the products that we buy, for the people that we work with, for the industries we support? It's the same kind of thing.
68% of Gen Z consumers say that the political and social position of a retailer or a manufacturer has an impact on this.
Exactly.
5% with boomers, you know, and then the next is somewhere in the middle. But it's more transparency is the conversation. It's not part of the conversation right now. It isn't. So
it's fine to ask.
I'm going to teach you that just as, you know, because that word keeps coming up in this conversation.
Right. Okay, I think there's just another one or two here, but how would I reach out to Black students to train them on various creative pursuits, as I have a grant from the Nest from my e-commerce website and would like to develop a cottage industry in Southampton. The Nest is a fashion industry foundation to empower women and artisans.
Yeah,
awesome.
As well, Rebecca's lovely. I would say where is she or he?
In Southampton.
Southampton, as in out on in Hampton,
New York.
Yeah, Parsons, Pratt, the new school, FIT.
Right.
Start with any of those schools and ask them for students of color.
Right. We just got a chat come in to say the same.
And what's the New York School of Interior Design? I don't want to forget that one, because especially when we're talking about our industry. Yeah.
Tom, were you saying something?
No, I was saying we got a couple of chats coming in saying the same way you would. You're
It's the same, right?
Yeah. Same thing.
Black people are from America.
Yeah.
But quiet as this kept.
Right.
Yep. I believe that's all I got for
Somebody
you.
said, say what?
Exactly. Clutch the pearls.
So
The rest of the questions are more about resources, like I said before, which we'll compile and
I will
send out.
answer those questions on the email. The email's getting set up today, so by late this afternoon, it's going to be new influences at springboardfutures.com to get in touch with the panelists. We'll be posting this. I really want to say thank you, especially to the Market Center and to the press who've been incredibly supportive of this webinar. So thanks to World Business, HFN, IMC in New York now, Art in Atlanta. I mean, you've all just been amazing. I know I forgot something, I get my ass kicked about that, but You know what's gonna happen.
All right, while you think about them,
Everybody.
can we thank you, Tom?
Yes.
Yes,
I just
thank
want to
you.
thank you
Absolutely.
for asking good questions and doing great research and putting up with me.
And being bold about it, and being bold. That's what this
Yes, it was.
No, it's been a pleasure, honestly. You know, it's been a pleasure. It's been like a nice beating. I mean, the pre-meeting for all this you didn't see, but
really good work. We need
Yes,
more
absolutely.
people like you.
Yeah.
Honored to be a part of it.
process.
Yeah.
But it's been, there's so much we can do. There's so much we can do, and the thing is, it's just so fucking easy. You know, it
Yeah.
doesn't have to
You
be
don't
too-
have to make it harder than it is.
No, it's not that hard.
It's
It's not that difficult at all.
It's hard to think sometimes when we think in these ruts because it's easy
Yeah.
and that doesn't make it right. So
We're
So,
creative
and listen,
people, so
we
we can
can
create
start-
something.
So,
You know?
sorry, Katrina, but I was going to say we could
Yes.
all start today by just looking at who are our friends, what television do we watch, what books are we reading, what kind of restaurants are we going to. If you don't have some people of color in your groups, get them in there.
Absolutely.
Fun. Get some
And some
talent in the group.
Or go to the Black-owned restaurants. Go to events that you might think would be primarily patronized by Blacks. Be a part of. Get to understand the culture. It's not just the history, but the culture also.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. For many years, we've been the only one in the room. So sometimes you might have to take a little
Be
bit of
the only one in the room. Don't be
You might
afraid to be the only one in the room.
Okay. Yeah.
Trust, you will leave there being hugged by many.
True.
So Visa Vasse, which is VISSE, is a poster and design studio. And they came out with this, which I had actually bought a larger version of for a neighbor. But I wanted to talk about it just in terms of merchandising, because part of this, it's not about anything. It's about everything. It's not just about ethnic art, certainly, or even ethnic inspired art, but just this is a discussion about unity. And I loved this. I love this piece of art.
Yes.
Because the message here, if you're thinking, oh, well, I don't know how to integrate, an appreciation for any specific culture into my assortment, that's not who my customers. Unity is everybody's customer.
Absolutely.
Coming together, equality is everybody's customer, because we all at times felt not a part of the unity and we've all at times felt like the outsider. So bringing us all together, unity is bridging politics. So we've really got to take advantage of that. And I don't mean to bring it all back to product, but it's about product too. Product helps us communicate with each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Somebody said they couldn't see your picture very well,
Oh,
Tom. They said it looked like two white people.
It's actually two hands making a heart, and it says it's all about love. But this and it's just there's a racial statement in there, obviously. But I'm just going to put the at the back. I'm going to try to get the
Can't
card.
see that.
I'll send it all to you. I'll send it all to you. But it's just an example. There's so many great brands and companies that are speaking to unity, both in the story they tell on product, and in the stories that they tell about just moving that ethos forward. So important. So
Yes.
I think the more that people allow themselves to be in the company of Black people, and not just that one Black person, but maybe be that only white person in the group, the more comfortable they become, and that fear, whatever that fear is that they have, will go away. Will dissipate. They will start to, and they can relay that kind of information, those kind of feelings, to their family, to their friends, to help everyone, in the long run.
Marian Marshall's comment that just came in on chat, she said, learn to be uncomfortable. And it's true. Look, it starts uncomfortable. It does, it does. And next thing you know, you
move through it. You move through it.
Yeah.
And I will also say that when you do that, when you find yourself being the only only white person in a company of Blacks, you don't have to act Black. And what does act Black mean?
Whatever that is.
Whatever that is. Because that's something else too. That's another conversation right there, though.
It is.
The whole term acting Black.
Yeah.
But just be you. Just be you, and let them be them. Yeah.
Thank you all so much. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you all.
Patty, Everett,
Patty,
You know,
Katrina.
good to see you.
Bye.
Keep well.
good
Before
people.
we go for a drink, can we get rid of social distancing?
I know, exactly. We should be going to have one now, right?
Now, exactly.
Have a good
Yes.
one.
And thank everybody for
Bye.
tuning in and staying.